This story takes place when I was a junior in high school. I grew up in a small town in northwest Iowa. I leave the name of town out of the story, but it was built in the mid to late 1800s on a valley. Unknown to me until a few months later, this valley was sacred to the Sioux Indians who lived here before the settlers came. With this new information, I was able to tie my experience up and finally have a conclusion to the fact I knew. I was an idiot my sophomore summer just before my junior year. I got into drinking and got really close to my small group of friends. Sadly, the summer ended and we began school again. Now I run cross country, so I am very familiar with all the roads and trails in and near our town. One night, me and I'll call my friend D for this story, were at a volleyball game. We decided that we would leave early to go rip a few darts like normal idiotic teenagers. I didn't like cigs, but I knew he did and he didn't like to smoke alone, so I went with to keep him company. We decided that we would just go to the cemetery to do it that night because it's quiet and very secluded from the rest of town. Now I've been the one who that cemetery employs over the summer to mow and trim the gravestones, so I'm quite familiar with it. I find it very beautiful in the summer because it has rolling hills and its unique shape. We stop at Dee's house to get the cigs and then head over the cemetery so we don't get caught. We park right in front of the mower shed, which is on the north side of the cemetery. The cemetery has the shape of a rectangle. It's about 1/2 mile long and a mile wide. And every about 200 feet a new section begins. The cemetery is facing east to west the long way. Gravel roads separate the sections. The back part, which is also the older part, has more trees in the cemetery. And the only side of the cemetery that doesn't have a forest across it is the east side where the road is. Otherwise, the whole cemetery is just in the middle of the woods. More on the outside part, but still on the outside of the woods and built on a hill. We got out of his Jeep and began to just walk around the gravel roads with only our phone flashlights, for it was around 9 p.m. and was pitch black. We even ran on these gravel roads for XC practice, so D was familiar with where we were too. We started to smoke the cigs as we walked around, just talking about our future and other stuff like that. It was actually a heartfelt moment until D noticed he dropped the pack of cigs. So we doubled back to look, but couldn't find them on the gravel path that we stayed on. Now this is when it happens. I know this sounds corny and cliche, but it's the honest truth. As we were searching for the cigs, D noticed something in the woods. We were on the north side, which is the oldest side and is also closest to the woods. He told me that he sees something glowing in the dark. He said they look like yellow dots. I looked all over the same place he was and couldn't see them. But being idiots, we walked into the section to get closer to the woods to find out what it was. We get about halfway from the woods to the gravel path, and that's when I start to hear the faint sound of a voice. I asked D if he heard that, and he said no while keeping his gaze fixed on the yellow dots. I couldn't make out what exactly the voice was saying. At this point I'm freaked out, but D really wants to know what it is, so we press on a little further. Then his voice gets louder, still not able to make out what it's saying though. Only this time D hears it too. I said to him, "You hear that too, huh?" The voice sounds familiar to me now, it sounded like my little brother. D responded to me saying it sounds like my mom. My heart sank into my chest as I felt it hard to breathe all of a sudden. I told D that it sounded like my little brother and his skin went white and he started to breathe fast and heavy. We both look into the woods as now I too say the glowing yellow dots. But only for a moment until they vanished without a trace. We look at each other and decide without speaking a word to go a few more steps. Just as we took our first step, the sound of something moving fast and heavy behind us forced us to turn around and find nothing. We make eye contact and book it back to Dee's Jeep. Lucky we weren't very far from the Jeep and jumped in as I threw it into drive and sped out of there without looking back. I drove us back to the school so I could get my car. We didn't say a word and I just got out and went home. The next day at school we met before our class started and talked about what the hell happened last night. Neither of us knew and we decided we just won't talk about it again. I soon resigned from that summer job and gave it to a younger kid. This happened 2 years ago. And recently I learned what a Wendigo was. They are creatures in Native American legend who look like human deer hybrids. They are able to move at freakishly fast speed and can mimic the voice of loved ones to draw you close. Apparently they roamed Native American land, and then my experience came back and it all made sense. The only part of the Wendigo we saw were what we believed to be the yellow eyes. I believe that what we encountered that night was a Wendigo. The scariest part is I found this out just before Christmas break, and when I returned home, me and Dee went back out to the cemetery to confirm the suspicion. What we found scared me so much I actually wet myself. We got out of my car and walked the same path. Only just a few minutes into the walk, we find the same pack of cigs Dee dropped lying in the snow.